2 weeks ago, when we talked trade, it was, okay, it's a package of one of or both Kevin Huerter and Harrison Barnes and Davion Mitchell, maybe some picks. And what can you go get with that?
Mm-hmm.
But over the last few days, for Harrison Barnes specifically, and over the last couple of weeks for Kevin Huerter, you're starting to see them contribute more, and you're starting to see the Kings look more like last year's Kings. Last night wasn't great, but let's put that aside for a second.
Mm-hmm.
The previous 3 games, the previous 3 wins, they looked like, at least offensively, the Kings from last year. And I think it shifts the conversation a little bit, because now it's not just a matter of, hey, how can you get better? Because now it's, okay, if you're getting this out of Harrison Barnes, and again, last night aside, he didn't shoot it great last night, but an engaged, rebounds, assists, filling the stat sheet Harrison Barnes.
Mm-hmm.
And you're getting a Kevin Huerter who is going to be a 40+% three-point shooter, and who's going to average 14 to 17 a night, and he's going to pull down some rebounds, and he's going to play some good defense.
At least solid defense.
Right.
Yeah.
He's going to try on defense, which is like 60% of the thing. But the question now becomes, okay, how do the Kings improve at those spots? Because when Kevin Huerter wasn't shooting it and Harrison Barnes wasn't giving you anything, it was easy to go, literally anything will help. Literally anything will be better than this. But now I think you have to be a little more calculated. Now that you get better versions of these players, now it can't just be, throw them out the door for anybody. And it makes me think that as we approach the trade deadline here, maybe there's a Kessler Edwards type of move out there where it's a future second round pick or a couple of future seconds for a wing type of player who may or may not contribute. But I don't know if there's this big splash move coming that's going to make them like significantly better than they are when Barnes and Huerter are playing like they have the last couple of weeks.
I mean, I get that, right? I just think that this isn't about a 1-year build. It's not about 1 or 2 years of playoffs. And I think that there is a danger to buying into what's happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because, again, we talked about wins. The win is all that matters in the end, right? But if you're winning and your team still has these glaring weaknesses, you have to be honest about what your team is, and you have to keep resetting what the honesty level is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, we talked about it maybe 2 weeks ago. Would you trade Harrison Barnes and Davion Mitchell for Moses Moody and Andrew Wiggins? I mean, maybe you would, but at the same time, I think that deal in itself, you're like, okay, if this is the type of Harrison Barnes, then I probably wouldn't do that deal. First of all, the money is hugely different, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Wiggins is still going to make a whole bunch of money over the next 4 years or 3 years, where Barnes is on a more calculated deal, like 17, 18, 19 million. I'm okay with that, right? Especially if you're getting a young player like Moody that may or may not fit your system moving forward, all that. But like, I don't think that Wiggins makes you better. And because if Harrison Barnes can be this still, and you've found the way to turn the switch back on, like now you just have to figure out how to keep the switch on. You don't have to, you can see that he can still be a very formidable player for you.
Mm-hmm.
You still need more though. And so do I change my ideas? Like when I'm looking in the trade machine, have I potentially pulled Harrison Barnes and Kevin Huerter out of potential trades and seeing if I could still work the same trades with Trey Lyles, Chris Duarte, and Davion Mitchell that I could with the others? Because I think a lot of time we're talking cap filler for most of these deals.
Right.
Like even though Harrison Barnes is under contract for another 2 years, or same with Kevin Huerter, they're realistically in a larger deal. They might be looked at more as cap filler, that just to meet salary, right? Now I'm looking at different ways to get to that salary number to see if there is an alternative route to get there. And I think that you can, like certain deals that you can do in a different way. And so, yeah, I think maybe it does change the way you're thinking about this team and the players that are on it. But you still have to be aggressive with the idea that this is hopefully a window of playoff runs. It's not we got to get back to the playoffs. It's no, we need to build so we can be this team that we want to be like 5 years from now.
Yeah.
So we're a contender next year or the year after. That's what you're looking for.
No doubt. I guess that's where my question comes in and why this is so difficult.
Yeah.
Because I'm with you. This is not about, hey, go get. That's why Zach LaVine doesn't make any sense. Maybe Zach LaVine makes you a little, and I don't want to dive into a Zach LaVine conversation. Just
of course.
Follow me. Maybe Zach LaVine makes you a little better this year because it's another score and he can shoot it, and oh man, watch out. But down the road, that handcuffs you big time.
Oh yeah, it crushes you.
Over the next 3 or 4 years, you are not going to be as good as you probably could have been had you not made that move. Okay, great. But on the other hand, I don't look at this team, even with Kevin Huerter and Harrison Barnes playing this well, I don't look at them and go, yeah, that's a title team. That's a team that's going to go hang with the Denvers and the Bostons and the teams at the top of each conference. I'm leaving out like OKC and Minnesota because I got to see it with them first.
Yeah.
But and Philly, because Philly's got to make the conference finals and the finals first. But I don't see the Kings hanging with those teams just yet. But this is what I brought up earlier, where it's a little bit of the rock and the hard place thing. They have a group where you're going, man, not a tiny change, but a small tweak to this rotation, a small tweak to the starting five or your top 7, maybe get you over the hump and maybe put you in that contender spot. But you can't make that move without dealing a player within that group already. And how much better are you getting? And that's why I think at this deadline, I don't think that move is there.
It might not be, but Kyle, we don't know all the moves that are out there.
No, sure.
And I think that's like, I know that's, no S Sherlock.
Yeah,
it is. But the fact is, like, there could be something that really does make this team better.
Mm-hmm.
And they're weighing the damage it will do short term to get to the long term.
Yeah.
And it's a very difficult thing. Like swapping out, again, like just the hypothetical, swapping out Harrison Barnes and Davion Mitchell for and a first round pick for Jeremy Grant.
Sure.
That makes you better. Does it make you a contender? It makes you much better. It does. It gives you something that you don't have right now, which is that long athletic guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But is it the thing that puts you way over the top? And now you're investing in a 29-year-old. What you're basically doing is running it back, but with like one piece swapped out.
Yeah, a little better version of what you're going to get at Harrison Barnes.
Exactly. So if that deal, like if it is there, then you start weighing the other things. Because again, I think we can put Harrison Barnes, if this is who Harrison Barnes is, right? We can put him in a bucket that's a group of similar players, and you can all rank them how you want. But the fact is, they're all like tier 3 power forward / small forwards, right? So the Kyle Kuzmas, the Jeremy Grants, the Andrew Wiggins.
Sure.
Like Harrison Barnes fits into that category.
Exactly.
Like whether you love him or not, he does. He fits into that category. This
version of Harrison Barnes that we've seen the last 4 games.
Well, that and the version of Harrison Barnes that we've seen for the last 5 years in Sacramento.
Sure.
He's just a little bit older than all of these guys, but he still fits into that same category. And now it's like, okay, how much better am I getting? And why I sit here and I don't like the idea of trading a guy like Trey Lyles. I think Trey Lyles should be in Sacramento,
no doubt,
for a while. But at $8 million, and if I can stack him and a couple other players, and I can go get one of those other, let's say you can somehow get Jeremy Grant. Let's say that the money works with Davion and Chris Duarte, and then you got to throw in one more minimum scale guy, and along with Trey Lyles, and you can go get Jeremy Grant without trading Harrison Barnes. Now I do 2 things. Number 1, I get better in my starting lineup. Number 2, Harrison Barnes is a better player than Trey Lyles. I get better in 2 positions at one time with one move. And so those are the things I might be looking at. So I'm not playing on the peripheral. I don't think you can go out there and find a player that's going to be, maybe if like Caruso becomes available and you're able to go get Caruso and swap him in. But again, Caruso for me is very similar to a Matisse Thybulle trade or the Mason Plumlee trades that I was talking about last year. That's still like you might say he's a little bit better than a peripheral, but he's got to be better than the guys you have on the court.
Those are the type of moves that an already fringe title contender gets them over the top. I think the Kings are shy
They're not
of that.
They're the one step below that.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think it's an interesting discussion because you have to balance so many things. Like, what would taking Harrison Barnes out of your locker room mean?
Yeah.
What would that, for the rest of the guys? How much damage could you do in that situation? And I'm not making a move because of that. If there's a trade out there that requires Harrison Barnes has put in it, that's the reality of the business. It is he will be 32 in the coming months. Like this is the way the game works and what you have to do if you're a franchise. You have to maximize your talent while you have it. And you need to bail on that talent when there becomes a point where you've gone to a different age, like with the rest of the players.
Yeah.
Like your core is a different age. And, can Harrison Barnes play out the entirety of his contract? Sure, but I would not bet on that at all.
No.
And I just wouldn't. In my time covering the team, there's been one player with a 3-year or longer contract to play out the entirety of the contract. I asked you this one another time. You remember who it was?
I don't.
Kosta Koufis.
Oh yeah, that's right.
He's the only player to play out a 3-year free agency deal or longer and actually stick the whole time.
That's so wild. One of the things that when we talk trade deadline and we talk what do the Kings need or not need, I go back to last night's Memphis game. And I said earlier that if the Kings approached every game the way this Memphis Grizzlies team approaches every game, where I hate you, but let's just, they've got that dog in them. Like there is just like, dude, they are going to scrap, they are going to claw, and that's just kind of the Grizzlies ethos and has been for 2 decades. But that's when we talk trade deadline and you talk a player like Jeremy Grant. Jeremy Grant's got some dog in him.
Yeah.
Jeremy Grant is going to play hard on defense, and he is going to go get you a bucket if you need it on offense, but he can also knock it down from the court. And that's where, when Jeremy Grant, like in a vacuum, you go, does he make you that much better? Like, probably not. But if he brings that attitude to the team a little bit and makes it so your nights in Memphis aren't like, oh boy, they might lose this one, or makes it so you're not losing randomly to Charlotte or losing to a shorthanded Portland team, or pick your favorite bad Kings loss of the year. If he can turn a couple of those games around, that I think exceeds what he brings just on the court from a talent perspective, if that makes sense. I hope I'm articulating that correctly.
No, I think I can even articulate it in a different way that might make sense. When you look at Harrison Barnes, you think he's 6'6", 6'7", right? He's 6'8". When you think of Jeremy Grant, you think he's 6'9", maybe 6'10".
Yeah.
He's 6'7".
Yeah, it's a great point. That's a great point.
One guy plays much bigger than he is. And like his visually, you think, oh my gosh, he's
legit thought he was 6'10".
No, he's 6'7" with a 7'3" wingspan.
That's wild.
And so I think that's what you're talking about. Like,
yes,
there's just a player that you like. It's always about like the noisy points of Malik Monk versus the methodical points of Trey Lyles. Trey Lyles can have 16 points in a game and you think, okay, Trey Lyles was a big reason they won this game. But you look up and you're like, when did he get to 16?
Yeah.
And then Malik Monk's at 12 and you're like, I remember every single one of those.
Yeah.
That guy was crazy. It's
yeah.
like he had 12 points. The other guy had 16. The other guy was more impactful than your guy. But it's the way that they do it. And I think that there is like this really interesting way that we view players and just by visually watching them. So like, look, there's a tall task here to improve this team and to make it much better and to figure out ways to keep building and building. And, we talked about it during the break. The NBA, this is actually a big deal. The NBA just came out with their projections for NBA salary cap for next season, and it's at 141 million, which a lot of people thought it was projected at 142. which is based off of like a whole bunch of
TV
factors.
rights deals,
Yeah,
et cetera.
Well, but also like basketball related income, right? So the TV rights deal is usually pretty square. It is what
Right.
it is. We know what it is.
Right.
But like things like jersey sales or streaming or ticket sales or like all that stuff, it goes into it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the salary cap actually goes down to 141 from 142. But most people were projecting the cap to potentially go up to 145 or even 147.
Oof.
And so there is like this big, like today, it should be like, oh no, because not only does the salary cap drop by $1 million, but also the luxury tax doesn't go up.
Right.
And so that's a big deal as well. So if it's set at 172, where it could have been like 177 or 170,
that's a big deal.
That's a whole other player that you're fitting in.
Yeah.
It's a really big deal. You know what just happened to the Warriors? They just like their next season got even uglier.
Yeah.
Like their salary cap situation for next season, it got worse.
Mm-hmm.
And so that it's a big deal, especially when you're looking at a free agent like Malik Monk.
Mm-hmm.
Like Malik Monk, teams around the league thought, well, maybe I have an extra 3 or 4 million on top of this figure. That's gone now. There are now teams with less cap space than there were the day before.
Dang.
And so I think all of this plays into like a larger thing that when you are building a team, it just can't be, I got to go out and get every single high-end player, because we've seen what happened with the Warriors, where eventually even the like for the Kings, the De'Aaron Foxes of the world all of a sudden go from a $7 million player to a $27 million player in 1 year. And then next thing you know, he's up to a $32 or $35 million player. Then the next contract is going to kick in, and he's going to get up to like $70 million player at some point. Right. There's all of these things that are projecting out. Well, that's what's happened to the Warriors. The reason why the Warriors is not because they were ridiculously silly in free agency, is that they kept paying their own talent to, and the Kings still have that. They still have a guy named Keegan Murray that's going to get paid. And then even in a way, Malik Monk is their own talent. He's a guy that had not found success in other stops.
Yeah.
He finds success here. And now how do you pay that talent? And so again, you can't whiteboard this thing out for February 8th, 2024. It's not the way it goes. You have to project everything. You have to see how all of these puzzle pieces fit in together. And I actually think it's why the Kings right now have been shopping for these guys that are locked up for 3 or 4 years. You know, the Kyle Kuzmas, the Jeremy Grants, because they're with those trades comes an understanding of what the future is. You aren't just trading for this year. You're trading for, you're acquiring a contract as well, which is why Kevin Huerter was such a valuable piece when you trade for him and he's starting a 4-year 65. Like, you understand what your budget is now. And so I think the Kings are trying to figure out what their budget is moving forward, but they also, to have these pieces that are solidified, that are budgeted pieces, that's a big deal, because like the one wild card going into this offseason is that you have no idea what someone's going to offer Malik Monk.
Sure.
But the other guys are all locked into place.
So would you, how do I put this? Okay. At the risk of this coming off the wrong way, and we'll figure it out then. Would you say then the Kings' goal is not to win a title this year?
No, I think that their goal, like if it works out that they win a title, sure.
Yeah.
But you have to make the moves to, you know, first of all, I think you had to give this team an opportunity to show you what they had in a second year, right? The run it back idea.
Yeah. I was mostly on board with that.
Okay. And then midway through the season, they didn't look like the run it back team. Like up to the first 41 games, they did not look like the run it back team. They looked like a totally different version of the previous team. Game 41, 42, 43, 44. This looks like the run it back team, but with a better Keegan Murray. That's what it looks like. And so you're starting to like try to wrap your brain around what it is that you have. And I think it's so incredibly difficult for Mike Brown as a coach, but also Monty McNair.
Yeah.
Because you aren't just playing like trade machine. You're swapping out individual players that matter, that mean something to a coach, that means something to other players. Every piece has its value in some way.
Yeah.
whether it's positive or negative. And then you got to figure out, how do I replace these with pieces that will fit and not have like the Iman Shumpert effect. Where your team goes from way up here to like completely crumbles when they lose a guy who basically was barely playing, but it meant something to the back end of the team, the spirit of the team. So I don't know, like your question, whether they're playing for a championship. No, if they can make a deal that makes them a championship contender, heck yeah, you make that deal.
Sure.
No question.
But is that deal out there? And that's
where we get back to the unknown.
Right. And that
deal might be out there. We just haven't heard it yet.
Yeah. And that's where, so every team is trying to thread the needle of, and you get your teams like Boston where your core is dynamite and locked in and you're going to contend for a title every year. Right. But you're also trying to map out, okay, what is the future? How do you continue contending for titles down the road?
Yeah.
And the Kings are trying to ostensibly do that same thing. They're trying to contend now while also figuring out how to contend for titles down the road. And typically my thought process on this is, if you can nuke your next 10 years for a championship today, do it. I say that every time, but with the Kings specifically, I don't know that trade is out there, because that earth-shattering deal means like Keegan Murray's out of here. Like, he would have to be a centerpiece of a deal like that. And I don't think that deal is on the table that is also going to make the Kings a championship contender this year.
Okay, so I'm going to flip it around before we go to break. If you were to nuke this season, but give yourself an opportunity to win multiple championships down the road, would you do that? Because it's just the opposite of what you're thinking. And I think yes. If you had to give up this season today, and it required you to make a 4-for-1 swap that you knew that there was a good chance you weren't going to be able to recover from, but it gave you the centerpiece that you needed to go along with Fox, Sabonis, Keegan Murray, then heck yeah, you do it. Right? I mean, because that deal's out there. But I'll tell you what it would be after the break.
We're going.